Hi, it's Alexa Shalin, and today we'll look at Science Institute Security Control number 4, known as Continuous Vulnerability Assessment and Remediation. We'll look at the tool and steps it takes to implement the control in our organization. Let's have a look.
Before we start implementing continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation control, we'll need to define the scope. Either we are going to go with wall-to-wall approach, so basically scan and evaluate everything we discovered, or we're going to go with a samples approach. We take a sample of service or sample of workstations, find the best representative machines, and then scan, and then we can extrapolate the result, thinking that the other typical machines that we selected are going to be represented in the same vulnerabilities. Now, so that's the first step, is define the scope. Then we will need to run the scan, and when we get the scan results, we can look at the ways to report and make priorities. So we can prioritize what we're going to fix first, the top 10 vulnerabilities, or we are going to most likely choose the best result for the effort. So we can take 10 vulnerabilities which are critical, fix those, or we can look at the top 10 patches that we will fix most of the vulnerabilities in our environment. Then we will need to remediate. We need to apply the patches, do the workarounds, change configurations or something else, and then we'll need to verify it again. So have we fixed the problem? And then basically it means we'll need to scan the environment again to confirm that actually the vulnerabilities do not exist anymore. If we can't fix the vulnerabilities for certain reasons, let's say if we patch the system, it may break the business critical application, then we'll have to put the remediation plan in place to make sure that in X number of days or months or weeks we're still gonna fix the problem. So we're gonna start actually looking at assets. So we already have domains. So we already defined the network where we identify certain hosts. Then we added a host that we will scan into our host assets to our subscription, this Qualys Guard tool. We are going to focus on the most critical service first, so we're going to scan the first 10 service in our lab. And then let's start. So we define the assets, then we're going to schedule the scan. We're going to call it vulnerability assessment, and choose the scanner that are going to execute the job. Then we're going to select the range. So, as discussed, we're going to go with the first 10 and launch the scan. So when the scan is going to complete, it's going to take several minutes. It may take, on a large estate, significantly longer. Then we can look at the results. So we're going to look at the one done before and see the raw results, more technical view, basically everything we've managed to discover. And we can see that security risk average is 3.8, which is done by the tool automatically based on information known about vulnerabilities and their scoring. A bit of information, so we can analyze every single point of those. What I would like to look at is actually one of those Windows boxes and look at vulnerabilities there. Okay, so there are a few. And if I look at information on those vulnerabilities, I can see the CVSS base scoring. So it's actually quite severe, it's 10 out of 10. Then what is the threat, impact, how do we fix it, here's a solution for it, and actually exploitability information. So quite a lot of information, and how did we get the result. So it seems like the tool figured it out by looking at the registry key. Now we can look at something else. Okay, service pack 2 not installed. Okay, brilliant. So I need to download and install that one as well. So here's the raw details. Now we need to actually look at maybe a bit more on the reporting side to make sure that once we make decision, is a decision made at the point where we have the best possible information. So we'll look at technical report. Similar information that we've seen on the previous results window. This one is in PDF format, and it goes on for pages and pages and pages long, which is maybe interesting, but most likely we still want to actually focus our effort.
We can actually see the business risk matrix. We can actually get a blended security risk result across our entire organization and see the trend. That's most important. What was the trend in terms of vulnerabilities in the last 8 weeks? So we can have this type of picture where we could see the number of vulnerabilities tend to go up, then we run the patch exercise, and then it goes on again until the next patch later.
Then we will look at the scorecard report, which will give us a bit more information, a bit more intelligence, what kind of severity, vulnerability severity 3, 4, and 5, how they're distributed in our environment in the last 30 days. Since I already split the ranges into certain groups, it gives me stats across the groups. Then I can look at age of vulnerabilities, and I can say that I have 0 in this environment older than 180 days, which is a good news because most of the problems actually comes from those vulnerabilities that exist in the environment for more than half a year. What I need to do now is basically start looking at what actually assets I would like to fix first, and to make that decision I may even look at the patch report, and the patch report tells me that here's a severity 5, quite critical vulnerability, and there is a Microsoft patch for it. Only one host affected, so if there were more hosts in this environment with where this patch is actually applicable, it will tell me number of hosts and the list of them. So this report is much shorter, which helps me to prioritize. I may want to start with severity number 5 first, and then move on to severity number 4 and then 3. Once I actually implement the patches, I can go back and scan the environment again. Once I scan and confirm that actually patches are implemented, I haven't forgot to reboot the server, and so on and so forth, then I can look at how to actually get more information, and by getting more information I may need to actually authenticate to those systems, and using authentication then I will be able to extract information from the machine about those applications which are not running. So I already run and demonstrated that we discovered the Internet Explorer vulnerability, which normally a scanner wouldn't be able to get without being able to authenticate on the system. And what we did is created authentication record, Windows record, or it can be Unix record, whatever the system is actually in place. And let's have a look. And we can specify the particular domain name, if it's a domain, say directory. Then we don't have to specify the IP address, even the section grayed out, because the system will actually figure out what authentication to use. It depends on what domain that system belongs to. If we go with a local authentication and use local credentials, then we'll have to specify what IP addresses we're going to use to use this authentication. The authentication record is created. Then the next step is actually make sure that when we scan, we use that authentication, and we do it through the option profiles. In option profiles, in this case, I create initial option with authentication. So we create new option, and the important bit here, we can keep the scan. How do we actually run the scan by default? So in this case, 190 ports. We can go with all 65,000 by going full. It's actually, the important bit is enable the authentication. We take the Windows here, if it is a Windows, others, if there are others, save it, and when we schedule a scan, we actually use that particular authentication option. So option profile. So in this case, I already used the initial options authentication profile, which managed to pick up more information because not every software is actually hangs on an open port. And once we start doing this exercise regularly, then we can comfortably say that we implemented SANS Institute Critical Security Control number 4, known as Continuous Vulnerability Assessment and Remediation. The tool itself, it actually can give a bit more how to prioritize, change types of the reports, the way it's been presented, how to make the information more actionable, and then we can even track the progress through remediation functionality, where the systems actually automatically create the ticket for every vulnerability, and then it actually closes it down as soon as the vulnerability has been fixed and confirmed. So we don't have to synchronize it with our external ticketing tools, but it can be integrated through the APIs, and we focus to what is actually important to the organization, is managing vulnerabilities, assessing them, and remediating. It was Alex Shalin. Thank you for watching.